All right, welcome back. And we're going to begin with a second kind of labor mobility and the final kind that your chapter talks about, job turnover. So this isn't moving for a job, but it still is changing a job, leaving one position, going to another. So your textbook highlights that in the model of a perfectly competitive labor market that no job separations are going to occur. This is that static model of equilibrium that we talked about in the chapter on Hayek, that everything is perfect and there's no need to change anything. Every worker is matched up with a company that's the best fit for them, and every firm has the workers that are most productive. We've maxed out the efficiency stats in the entire economy, but this isn't the case in the real world. So people take jobs all the time that turn out to be difficult, or maybe they have bad bosses or coworkers that are really tough to deal with. They decide to move to a new state or maybe to a new country, or they struggle to find a new job after they leave. Maybe because their struggle, they take an imperfect job, knowing that they're going to wait for a better one to come along. And then within a year or so, they leave for that better fit. In the real world, workers and firms are different. They have different skill levels for workers, and firms have different characteristics and different norms within them. So matches are not perfect. I mean, something may be a really good fit on paper, but because of just the company culture, the norms of how people work in that firm, it turns out that the worker and the firm aren't a good match. Now, the two groups that tend to leave jobs the most are the newly hired workers, so workers just on the job for the first year or two, and the lowest skilled workers. So there tends to be a lot more job separation for them than workers that have either higher education or have been with the firm longer. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Now, because workers and firms have different characteristics, job separation can be a good thing. It results in a better fit for one party and the other party be, the same off, or it can benefit both parties. You can probably think of jobs from your past where you were not a great fit, even if it was a part-time job during school. So for those jobs, it's probably good for you and for the firm that you no longer work there. It can be difficult to go without a job for a while, and firms usually don't like to have open positions. So these are some serious costs of job separation. But in the long run, separating when there's a bad fit and finding a better fit is a good thing. Whether it's a firm finding a worker that fits their needs and their company culture and all that, or whether it's an employee finding a firm that's a better fit for their wants and their needs. So job matching is kind of like marriage. It's not enough for one side to be willing. You need both parties to agree to the arrangement and to be made better off. A company may be perfectly fine with an employee, but that employee may really want to leave because of something happening on the job or because of a better job that's out there. So it's a match that requires both sides to want it. Now let's bring back a concept from the human capital chapter. Remember the general and specific human capital? When a worker receives general human capital, they can use this at any job. So the firm may prefer a worker with these skills. They almost always do. But they will not invest in training a worker to develop these skills because that worker can leave, take those skills elsewhere and use them. They can use those skills that the company pays for them to train them up to get a better job so that other firm can benefit from those skills. But specific human capital, that can only be used at the firm. That's relevant to only the things happening at the firm. So the firm is going to be happy to cover the cost of human capital development. Think of your own life with education. Now, they may be paying for this program, but think for undergrad. Firms don't pay for your undergraduate education, but you bring those skills in, and then they train you on specific things that you need at that job. So you can think of your bachelor's degree as general human capital, and then your training on the job when you first started as specific human capital. Well, we do see some evidence of a difference between specific and general human capital. So remember how we said that older workers and workers with more experience are going to stay on the job longer, that they're less likely to separate from the firm? Well, as a worker works for a firm longer, they build up a lot of tacit knowledge and they develop skills that are only good for that company, that can only be used there. There are a bunch of things that I've learned about WVU in just my 3 years here, and things like how to navigate the system within the university that aren't going to help me elsewhere. It's not going to make me a better worker. So if I leave, those skills become useless, and other employers aren't going to pay me for those skills. So longer that workers work for a firm, the less likely they are to leave because of this specific human capital that they built up. Likewise, the firm is less likely to fire them because their replacement won't have this kind of knowledge. They won't be as productive because of that. Now, young people who quit and take a new job often experience substantial increases in their wages. Usually it's the wage that actually attracts them, but sometimes it could be company culture or company fit. But a lot of people I know, I mean, I'm 32, so I'm not exactly young anymore, but a lot of my friends in the first few years after school would hop jobs because they could get serious pay raises by doing that. But also, there's this thing internally in a firm that they're slow to offer wage increases to current workers, especially if they're a larger firm and they have a lot of people working at sort of the same level or the same position. You get kind of equity concerns where they feel that it'll be unfair. They worry about other workers thinking it's unfair for some to have really high salaries compared to others, even if they are super productive and they're bringing in that kind of money for the company. But this aversion within the company to do this will cause these workers to jump ship and to make more elsewhere. So here's a graph that shows an example over time. The black line is people that will move between companies. So for instance, at T1, they're still in their 30s. They go to a new company, their salary increases. Then after some time, they get laid off. As a worker gets laid off, they often experience career wage cuts, and these disruptions can negatively impact their future earnings for some time, especially because after you're laid off, it may be difficult to find another job that quite has the same fit. So it ends up with this, serious negative impact. And we're imagining over time, so that worker lays off, they get laid off, they find a new job. It's not that great of a fit, but they start doing well and making money over time. They quit that job and they find a job that's a much better fit, something more similar to their first job, and then, much more successful than they were before. We could also look at the stayers, people that stay in one job through the whole career, and look at their earnings. It starts low and then steadily increases over time. And then as they age, it starts to kind of level off. What we see for both of these in general, the increasing wages over time as workers gain more experience within the firm. They're building up this specific human capital that makes them more productive at their job. Yeah, it's important to note that workers experiencing a good job match are going to have low probabilities of job separation. So this stayer here probably has a really good match at their job. Now, for this other worker that moved, their second job might have been a really good match, but they get laid off for some reason. They find a job that's imperfect, that has this lower salary. They're going to be more likely to leave this job because it's not a good fit until they find this job here again. Hey, look, it's a much better fit. They're going to be much less likely to leave this job because it's a good fit. Now, this brings us to the end of chapter 7. We'll also pick up with some of the sections from chapter 8 next. No, I'm sorry, this was chapter 8. We'll do chapter 7 next. I did them out of order for this because of the topics. We'll talk a little bit about the wage distribution, and that'll bring us to the end of the lectures for this course.